Thank you very much for the kind introduction. I'm standing in front of you faced with the impossible challenge to deliver a scientific talk to you about a matter that does not lend itself to flashy videos and fancy presentations. But I think that we will master to break down that complex topic within 10 minutes so that you will take something from it, because it is so important for all of us to understand more about health. And I hope that you will not forget what I tell you. So you probably caught a cold recently. And do you still know where you actually got it from? You probably never met a person that actually had a cold. Still, you got sick. So the question is, why did you get it? So humans get exposed to bacteria and viruses all the time, yet we sit here completely healthy and we are not sick all the time. Why is that? There is factors that protect us, like our immunity, or that we get the organisms that make us sick a wrong way, like on our skin rather than into our lung. And there's also factors that make us more vulnerable, such as stress, diabetes, asthma, or the dry air from air conditioning, or high-dose exposure of pathogens. But let's step back one more step, because we are here for building and construction. So there is numerous ways how pathogens can get into our body. One is obvious. If we punch a needle, transplant an organ, we can't do anything about that here in construction. So let's take that aside. So we have three more groups how pathogens can enter our body. And one of the most common one is fomites, food and water. And we have spent a lot of time and a lot of money and effort to reduce this. We do hygiene, we have toiletry, we have sanitation, we have a cool chain for our food, we use gloves, and so on. And the WHO has pushed that a lot, and indeed, it has had massive impacts. We are not worried anymore when we go to a restaurant that we fall sick after we have eaten. We don't worry when we drink a water from the supermarket that we fall ill after we've done so. So that has been very efficient. However, for a lot of other diseases, like we've seen with coronavirus, there is very little efficiency. So there is more to transmission, which is droplets, for example, which is what we emit when we speak. They come out of our mouth when we sing, when we interact with one another. They have long been seen as the primary route of transmission of respiratory diseases. They can fall on surfaces, contaminate them, or they can directly impact on your opponent when you speak with them. And the best protection would be having a glass in front of you or a screen or a mask. But we can't do that. That creates an unfriendly atmosphere. And it also showed in Corona times that it didn't have the impact that we expected, because the normal way we interact is already a pretty good protection. But these droplets, they also dry, especially in dry air, and then they float for longer and create aerosols, which also come out of our lungs. And these aerosols, they float in the air and they can transmit diseases. We've known that for a very long time for diseases such as chickenpox, measles, influenza, norovirus, or also tuberculosis. And now, since COVID times, science has developed a lot of more methods to actually investigate that route of transmission. And we found that the aerosol-based transmission is a much more important route than we ever thought it be. And unlike what the WHO always tells you, hand washing is enough, it is not. So air hygiene is the overlooked challenge in construction of our time right now to create a more healthy living space. So how can we do that? There is numerous ways. The classic one is opening your window, but that doesn't generate a lot of air exchange, and it's impossible if it's hot or cold outside, if it's dusty or if it's noisy. So a lot of buildings incorporate HVAC systems, which are also used to remove the carbon dioxide, remove body smells, and they can also provide heating and cooling to your building. The air exchange rate is not very high, and if you want to have them safe for aerosols, you also need to have a decontamination system installed here, which is either a HEPA filter or an UVC solution. The next thing that has gained popularity during COVID times is decentralized filtration, which can be retrofitted in rooms very easily. And that can be switched on and off depending on where you use the room and how you use it. And you can combine it with existing HVAC systems or with AC and heating. And of course, that is a hybrid system that would do it all. Now you tell me, that's nice what you tell me here, but what is the hard evidence? Like, what can we expect if we do that? What would be the results? And COVID has shaken up the scientific world a lot, and I know you can't hear COVID anymore, but it has done a lot in investigation. If you look at really, really large studies with more than 200,000 pupils here or 100,000 pupils down there, you see that increasing ventilation with pure air has decreased the SARS-CoV incidence about 50% or even 12 to 15% per room air exchange per hour. But the evidence is much older. If we look into the past, we see that for an office building up here, for example, in the US, randomizing floors to more ventilation brought down sick leave rates by 35% just by doubling the room air exchange rate. And also in childcare facilities, where the contact is rather intimate, the reduction of sick leave days was 12 to 15% per increase in air exchange rate. So that would be a complete reduction in sickness of 30 to 50%. So you will ask me, why is it so much? That sounds completely unrealistic. Well, the reason is other sources of infection that we used to have in the past a lot have already been mitigated by hygiene and what we've talked about before. But still, if you increase ventilation in your room, you do not remove all pathogens. So why do you still get that kind of effect? Well, the reason is that dose matters. You do see the dose that you get for an organism is times time concentration. And when you have no organism, like shown down here, you obviously don't get sick. And if you get a lot, you will get sick, and there is also a tendency towards getting more severely sick the more you're exposed to. So what we are looking for is to move where we live from the red zone with high dose exposure to the green zone with lower dose exposure, where we still get exposed. So our immune system still gets some training, we get some kind of occult immunization, but we do not live in complete sterility, which is not good for the human body. So there is two main ways to get your air clean. One is by filtration. So basically you push your air through a filter that has very tiny holes, and you remove the germs physically out of the air. You have to change that filter. You have to lose a lot of pressure to do it, but it works. The alternative is using UV light, where you push the air through a field of strong UV light of this UVC wavelength, which will inactivate the germs, has less pressure, and still you can get rid of the germs, and you don't have to clean the filters. Both approaches work well, at least in a ducted system, because air will never go on its own through a filter, because that causes too much back pressure. So there is a second possibility of actually having a silent decontamination of your air, whereas you use the normal ventilation in a room, because as we sit here, our body temperature and the machinery that we have, or existing ventilation system, they move the air in a room, and then the air rises up and it can pass through a curtain of focused UV light, and it decontaminates the air and then it falls down. And that can have very high efficiency. You can reach unprecedented air exchange rates with that and create a safer environment. More than 30 times air exchanges are possible with that without having any noise, any wind, or any unpleasant feelings, and it's completely safe for humans. Why do we use UV light for that? Well, UV light is a wavelength of light that is outside of the human vision. It is shorter, and it has a peak germicidal activity at about 260 nanometers. It gets absorbed in biomaterial very, very quickly, so it cannot penetrate the human skin easily, but it can penetrate aerosols. Because aerosols, by their nature, they float in the air, they're very small. And the pathogens we are dealing with, bacteria, viruses, fungi, they're also very small. So we can penetrate them completely and we can kill them off. There is no resistance, like antibiotic resistance, against irradiation with UVC light either. So that is a very efficient way to do it. So please, let's advance together into a world where we do not have to worry about the air that we breathe, that we get sick, Like we do today when we go to a restaurant, we do not worry to get sick. We do not worry when we buy something in the supermarket that it will make us sick. So let's enter an age without any fear for conditioning, air conditioning, cold, or fear from getting infected from meeting other people. And as you can see, we have these systems already in operation in this room. If you look upstairs here, you will see cleaning systems here that we have designed in our university together with the company, and they are actually helping us to remove the germs that we are emitting here in that room and keep us all safer. And if you have questions on the systems or how to implement them, please see us at table number 16 in the audience. Thank you very much. If you have other questions, just let me know.